Number 9. Nazi statue in Uruguay. Back in 2006, a Uruguayan businessman named Alfredo Echegaray had a rare Nazi sculpture salvaged from the wreck of the Graf Spee, an armored ship that was scuttled in Montevideo after being damaged in a battle. The 700-pound eagle statue has a wingspan of 9 feet and is just one of a handful of known surviving examples of the Third Reich symbol. But the discovery was shrouded in controversy from the get-go because it's a reminder of the 9,000 Nazi war criminals who fled to South America to avoid prosecution after World War II. Echegaray argued in court that he spent $5 million over a 30-year period retrieving artifacts from the Graf Spee. It was ultimately ruled that he legally owned half the statue and that the government also owns half. The businessman accused Germany of pressuring the Uruguayan government to keep the controversial sculpture hidden from the public. He said that the German government has every right to bury an artifact from a dark chapter in history, but that it should at least pay him his fair share in order to do so. The art gallery housing the statue claimed that it was receiving offers for Echegaray's share of ownership, which is supposedly valued at up to $15 million. But the former head of the National Heritage Commission, William Ray Ashfield, scoffed at the estimate. He was one of several people who thought that the statue should go to a museum and be displayed in an educational but not glorifying historical context. Others wanted to see the Nazi relic destroyed. The battle appears to be ongoing. At last update, a court decided that the statue should be auctioned off, leaving many concerned that it would fall into the hands of neo-Nazis. Number 8. Missing aircraft. World War II entered its final year in 1945, and the fighting would continue for several months. While flying over the remote Indian Himalayas early that year, a C-46 transport plane vanished with 13 passengers aboard. It was en route from Kunming in southern China when it disappeared in a storm over India's Arunachal Pradesh. The plane was never seen or heard from again until now. American adventurer Clayton Cools learned about the wreck when one of the passenger's sons reached out to him and asked him to search for it. Working with a team of guides from the local Lisu ethnic group, Cools embarked on a months-long expedition to find the plane. It was no easy feat. The group crossed chest-deep rivers, climbed to high altitudes, and camped in freezing weather. Even the experienced guides were uneasy about the trek, according to Cools, because 3 Lisu hunters had died of hypothermia in the same area in 2018. So it was probably a huge relief when the group finally found the aircraft on a mountaintop and identified it based on its tail. There were no human remains at the wreck site, which represents just one of hundreds of military planes that went missing in India, China, and Myanmar during World War II. Most are believed to have crashed due to severe weather conditions like ice damage and hurricane-force winds, according to Cools, who said that only some aircraft losses were at the hands of the Japanese. Would you make this kind of dangerous trek if you knew there was a chance of recovering World War II-era relics? Number 7. German hideout in Argentina. In 2015, archaeologists from the University of Buenos Aires announced the discovery of what they believe is a World War II-era German hideout. Nestled in the thick vegetation of Argentina's Teucuare National Park near the country's border with Paraguay, this site has long been associated with legends of secretive German occupation. Evidence to back these claims was finally unearthed when the archaeological team found fragments of a German-made plate at the site, along with 5 German coins minted between 1938 and 1941. Surrounded by 10-foot thick walls and a hilltop tower, the alleged bunker is big enough to accommodate 6 to 8 families. It's an extremely remote area that would have been extremely difficult to access in the first place and even harder to survive in. Argentina welcomed Germans from the end of World War II until 1955. Their post-war population in the country numbered at least 5,000 according to records that were found in 2012. But most of them lived in cities or on ranches, not in secret bunkers, suggesting that the hideout existed before Germans began migrating to South America in large numbers. Skeptics denied that the clandestine refuge was used by Germans, arguing that it was a failed homestead that was advertised as a German hideout as a gimmick for attracting paying tourists to the site. What do you think? Actual Nazi hideout or tourist trap? Let us know in the comments down below. Number 6. USS Independence wreck. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Independence served in World War II between 1943 and 1945, playing a critical role in the American naval offensive in the Pacific. The following year, it was one of over 90 vessels that were used as a target fleet for atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. Codenamed Operation Crossroads, the project aimed to test the effects of a nuclear explosion on a naval fleet. Like many of the other ships that were used in the experiment, USS Independence was damaged during the tests. It was towed back to U.S. waters and docked in San Francisco while experts performed decontamination studies on it. In 1951, the Navy towed the vessel out to sea and deliberately scuttled it. Records of its location were imprecise and conflicting. One document indicated that the ship was 300 miles off the coast. Yet in 2015, researchers from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration found it just 30 miles off the coast near the Farallon Islands. They confirmed the wreck's identity using sonar imaging and by sending a remotely operated vehicle 2,600 feet to the ocean floor to investigate the site firsthand. The damage to the USS Independence from Operation Crossroads is apparent, but the ship's hull and flight deck were mostly intact at the time of the discovery. And as it turns out, the vessel was only partially decontaminated before it was sunk. There's detectable radioactivity at the site, and it's bound to leak into the water as the carrier continues to rust. Researchers are considering ways that they could travel safely to the site and retrieve parts of the wreck for further study. Number 5. Massive unexploded bomb. In 2019, workers who were tasked with deepening Poland's Piast Channel discovered a 6-ton bomb known as a tall boy. Designed by the British during World War II, the 19-foot-long explosive was found in one of the country's busiest shipping waterways. Tall boy bombs were among the largest weapons used during the conflict. Their effects mimicked an earthquake. The bomb found in Poland was dropped on April 6, 1945 during an Allied raid of the German cruiser Lützow, which was anchored in the channel. The workers reported the discovery and Navy divers were dispatched to the site. They soon discovered that the 12,000-pound bomb was unexploded. At first, authorities were unsure of what to do about the gigantic weapon. It had sat undisturbed at the bottom of the channel for 75 years and seemed like a non-threat to shipping traffic. Buried nearly 40 feet underwater, only the bomb's nose stuck out from the sediment. The waterway remained open while a crisis team met to figure out what to do. Finally, in 2020, a team of divers attempted to defuse the bomb, knowing that there was a 50-50 chance that it would explode. 750 people were evacuated from the area before the team tried using a remote-controlled device to burn the bomb's explosive charge without detonating it, a technique known as deflagration. Nevertheless, the weapon exploded, causing a huge column of water to blast into the air. Luckily, the divers were all at a safe distance and no one was hurt. Do you think that there are other as-yet undiscovered unexploded bombs lurking in other European waterways? Tell us your theories in the comments and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Number 4. B24 Liberator Bomber. Located in the sleepy countryside of Sussex, England, Arundel is a market town with a rich history dating back to the medieval era. But archaeologists recently found themselves excavating a much newer site with help from military veterans. Dating back to World War II, it consists of an American B-24 Liberator heavy bomber that crashed on June 22, 1944 after being damaged during a daytime air raid over France. 7 out of the 10 crew members aboard managed to escape the plane before it crashed, but the cockpit crew died in the crash after working to keep it stable enough for everyone else to exit. 2 of the 3 bodies were never recovered. The men are still listed as missing in action to this day, leaving their loved ones back home without closure and unable to properly grieve. One of the goals of the team that's currently excavating the site is to recover the missing remains and return them to their families. Veterans are assisting with the dig as part of the American Veterans Archaeology Recovery Program, which helps former service members cope with physical injuries and post-traumatic stress by offering archaeology as a form of therapy. Founded in 2016 by former U.S. Air Force captain and archaeologist Stephen Humphreys, the program has carried out 15 excavations. The program helps veterans who are struggling to find meaning and purpose in their lives while uncovering historically valuable artifacts and sites that help us to learn more about the past. Number 3. Maisy battery bunkers. Once the Germans were pretty sure that the Allies were planning to invade Nazi-occupied Europe, they designed and built an extensive system of defenses throughout their occupied territory. One fortification in Normandy, known as the Maisy Battery, was constructed in extra strict secrecy. It wasn't until 2006 that archaeologists discovered a collection of bunkers that formed part of the complex. The bunkers were found roughly 2 miles inland from Omaha Beach, which served as a landing area for the Allies during their invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944, also known as D-Day. Josh Gates, who hosts the TV show Expedition Unknown, visited the site in an episode that aired a few years ago. He described the bunkers as fairly large structures with hallways and multiple rooms, staircases, adding that the site consists of 2 large bunkers with 3 to 4 rooms each. Armed with 14 huge guns, the 20-acre battery complex became one of the largest German defensive positions due to its proximity to the Normandy invasion landing sites. It was also part of a chain of defensive sites along the coast of northern France known as the Atlantic Wall. The site was ultimately captured by U.S. Army Rangers. After the war ended, Maisy Battery fell into obscurity for over 60 years, becoming covered with overgrowth and concealed by nature. In fact, the complex was invisible to the naked eye until its rediscovery. Researchers are still excavating at the site, eager to learn all it has to tell us about this dark period in world history. Number 2. A dedicated soldier. The Japanese surrendered to the Allies on September 2, 1945, officially bringing World War II to an end. But one soldier named Hiroo Onoda refused to believe that the conflict was over. He spent the next 3 decades in the jungle on the Philippine island of Lubang, relying on his guerrilla warfare skills to remain hidden and evade capture. Onoda was originally joined by 3 fellow soldiers, one of whom left the jungle and returned to Japan in 1950. Another one of Onoda's companions died that same year, and the third lived until 1972. In 1974, the lone warrior's brother and former commanding officer traveled to Lubang to try coaxing him out of the woods. By then, numerous government officials had tried and failed to get Onoda to surrender. Finally, after more than 30 years of living in the wilderness, he emerged from the jungle wearing his Imperial Army uniform, cap, and sword, which were in remarkably good condition for their age. Onoda formally surrendered to Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos, who pardoned the man for killing as many as 30 people who he mistook for enemy soldiers after the war ended. In a later interview, he explained that he thought Tokyo's pro-US government was scheming against him in their previous attempts to persuade him off the island. Onoda spent a decade farming in Brazil before moving back to Japan, where he created nature camps for children. He passed away in 2014 at the age of 91. Number 1. Munich Art Stash. The Nazis committed the biggest art theft in history, stealing around 650,000 paintings and other works during their reign of terror throughout Europe. Many were never recovered, but every now and then some of these long missing paintings reappear. In late 2013, German authorities found 1,285 of the stolen pieces of art at an apartment in Munich. They're collectively worth an estimated $1 billion. The situation started to unfold when border agents interviewed and searched an elderly white-haired man named Rolf Nikolaus Cornelius Görlitz at the border between Munich and the Swiss city of Zurich. Officers had noticed the senior citizen acting nervous and flagged him for further investigation after finding an envelope filled with 9,000 euros on him. Strangely, the man had no records of paying taxes, receiving a pension, having health insurance, or having any bank accounts, yet he'd lived in a luxury apartment for over 50 years. Officials became even more suspicious when they realized that Görlitz has the same last name as Hildebrand Görlitz, an art dealer who helped the Nazis amass their huge cache of stolen artwork despite his one-quarter Jewish heritage. It just so happened that Hildebrand was Cornelius's father. Police raided the suspect's apartment and discovered a treasure trove of stolen art, including paintings by Renoir, Matisse, Picasso, Max Liebermann, Otto Dix, and more. Görlitz had clearly carried on his father's legacy of selling looted masterpieces. But he was never criminally charged because Germany's laws on the matter are ambiguous, and it's not necessarily a crime just to own a stolen painting. He passed away in 2014, shortly after the scandal broke. World War II discoveries continue to amaze even decades later. There's always more to learn, and while that's all for today, there's more to come, so thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.